I was reading the book Psychology and the Soldier a little bit more, and I'm on the chapter where they're talking about World War I, and they're just talking about the generals on the British side, and they're of course famous for being very obstinate, I think that's the right word, very obstinate, and not really realizing that the things they were doing are wrong. And one of the things I thought was crazy, I didn't realize how stubborn essentially they were in their ways, but there were apparently generals during World War I, essentially years into the war, who were still against the development of even machine guns. There was a general against the development of machine guns on the British side because he thought they weren't worth it in warfare, which is crazy because of course machine guns played a massive role in World War I. And then of course there were also a lot of generals, and even up to the Second World War, who were against the development of tanks. They wanted to keep the old horse cavalry. So when we look at it, hindsight's 20/20 kind of a thing, but when we look at it now, it's like, what the hell were they doing? And what also doesn't make sense is that there were generals who were genuinely good. They had good tactics, they understood that the nature of warfare had changed, and they were okay with using new technologies. But these old generals who were so stubborn in their ways, just one of the examples this book talked about was the relationship between General Smith Dorian and Sir John French. And Sir John French basically fired General Smith Dorian, even though he had a much better understanding of warfare than Sir John French did, at least based on how this book portrays things. What it stressed to me was the importance of evolving in your views as a leader and keeping an open mind, because we can see that if they had just, obviously we're probably not generals in warfare, but for them, if they had just kept an open mind, tons and tons of lives could have been saved, the war would have been shortened, etc., but they didn't. And I think one of the best ways to be able to keep an open mind really easily is simply by seeing for yourself. If somebody is coming up to you with a evolution, they're coming from a different perspective. Let's say it's one of your subordinates. They're coming from a different perspective than you. I think one of the easiest ways to, and if you don't understand it, I think one of the easiest ways to gain understanding of it is to just go down to their level, and you don't have to do their job, whatever, but you can go down to their level and just take a look at what's going on, how things are going. Why are they bringing this change up that I don't understand? Because if you go down to their level, you'll be able to see it from their perspective. Additionally, even regardless of seeing it from their perspective, just the shift in perspective will allow you, I think at least, give you more thoughts. Because you're changing things, it's easier to continue changing things. It kind of helps break down some of the inertia of movement of thought. And I thought that one interesting example of this, I've got some notes under the camera, so I'm just peeking down every once in a while. One of the interesting examples of this was, I think it was the book Take Command that I was reading, and it was talking about Toyota. And it was just saying Toyota has a way of doing things where I can't remember what the exact phrase is, but they have a phrase they say, which is, it's either if you want something done right, do it yourself, or see for yourself, something along those lines. But the basic idea is that if you want to really kind of gain more perspective, you have to see for yourself. And one of the examples this book gave, I think it was Take Command, I was listening to the audiobook. One of the examples this book gave was that when they were developing one of the new cars for the North American market, the developer actually went to North America and did a big road trip across North America, the Toyota engineer. And he talked with customers, he experienced the car for himself, and he did major design changes. Particularly, he focused a lot more on the infotainment system, I think that's how you call it, the in-car entertainment, because he realized that on a long road trip, it was the kids' comfort that really mattered, compared to in the Japanese market, because Japan, of course, just isn't quite as large as North America. In the Japanese market, it was more about things like fuel economy, stuff like that, right? The kids' comfort didn't matter as much because the drives weren't quite as long. So I thought that was really interesting, just this idea of see for yourself and how it helps you evolve your mindset and your perspective as a leader, and the World War I example of how important it is to be able to evolve and not get stuck in your ways. Because you get stuck in your ways, maybe we're not literally causing people to lose their lives in the thousands, millions, but you could still lose time, you could still lose money, there's still a lot of drawbacks. So be able to change in your ways. Obviously don't be too fluid, but be willing to gain perspective and gain understanding in that way.